And we're live in 3, 2, and welcome everybody to another episode of the Planetmullins Podcast. We're in season 3, going strong. Thanks for all of my viewers and listeners and watchers around the world. Today I have a fantastic guest who I think is just iconic, really, in the Colorado music scene and also around the world. Please say hello to Ric Cabot Podmore.
Hello, everybody. Hey, Rob. Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, man. I always have to laugh when I see your name in print or I say it, because it just reminds me of like, oh, that must be a very nice chalet in the French Alps or something, or like somewhere near Sussex was the former residence of Ric Cabot Podmore, who is now relocated to Westminster, Colorado.
Exactly. The joke is that you know where Colorado Sound is at 71st and Federal, right?
Right. Yeah.
Well, my father used to own a bowling center that used to be on the other side of Federal, which I grew up working in and whatnot and everything like that. So the big joke is
so you're really a bowling alley kid.
I was yeah. That's
that
what I
explains
thought my
a lot.
life was going to be.
But
the joke is that the furthest I could make it was across Federal Boulevard with my life. That's as far as I made it.
Wow. Well, yeah, the T-shirt for Colorado Sound looks nice, and
thank you.
And you're there in one of the studio rooms, or are you at home today?
I'm at home. This is my little loft office area and stuff like that.
Cool. Well, what a great studio, man. You and I have both done a lot of projects there, and I think you've done quite a bit more than I have, because I left in the 80s and moved to LA.
Right. Yeah. I think Colorado Sound's the reason I didn't move to LA. Is I was like, okay, well, this is right here, and I can look at those mountains every day, so I'm good, Right,
and plus you can just go, bowl a few games.
I haven't thrown a bowling ball in about, oh God, I think I quit when I was 18.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you guys still have the bowling alley in your family, or did your dad sell it off?
No, he sold them all off years ago, way long time ago. 80s, yeah.
Okay, cool, man. Well, during the little chat we had before we started the show, you mentioned Robbie Wyckoff, who's just a fantastic singer. And folks, if you don't know who he is, I'll let Rick tell you more about him. I just met Robbie a couple months ago at a Pablo Cruz rehearsal. But Rick, why don't you tell people about your story with Robbie?
Well, Robbie came into my life through John Robinson, who who John Robinson is.
Obviously. Oh, JR, the drummer, yeah.
And John started playing drums for me in 2004. And when we got done with his part of the tracking and he was in love with the songs, he goes, "Who's going to sing this?"
Right.
And I was like, "Oh, I hadn't even gotten that far yet." I couldn't believe I was in the studio with John Robinson. I'm like, going, I don't know. And he goes, "I got this guy and I want you to call him." And so, he sends me a couple of things with Robbie, and I went, "Oh God, yeah, that guy'd be great." So I ended up working with Robbie, and I think he's sung on, I'm going to say probably 10 tunes of mine through the years.
Okay.
But Rob kind of had, he's one of the top cats in LA doing sessions. He's on commercials and movies. He's sung in Shrek. But the big thing he did for 5 years, he was the lead vocalist singing all of David Gilmour's parts on Roger Waters' The Wall tour. And that was a 5-year tour that played, obviously arenas, and then it moved into stadiums.
Huge.
And the stories he would tell me about, 5 nights sold out to 80,000 people in Rio de Janeiro. And I'm just like, oh, I can't even imagine.
Wow.
So yeah, Rob's a great, great singer, great friend.
Super nice guy too. I mean, I spent the afternoon with the Pablo guys up at Larry Antonino's studio, Agora Borealis.
Yeah, great little joint. It used to be Glenn Campbell's. Did you know that joint?
Yeah, that studio was Glenn Campbell's house for a long time.
Yeah.
And a lot of people didn't know that about Glenn, is that he was just this killer jazz guitar guy.
Oh yeah.
that did a lot of session work and stuff. But so are you on staff now at Colorado Sound? What do you?
No. I've just always been an independent. I just, I'm Kevin Clark's, security blanket.
What does that mean?
It means I give him a lot of money to work there.
Okay.
I've just always been independent and doing my own thing and stuff like that. I'm, kind of my own thing. I don't play well with others, Rob. That's the problem. Is that
well, you and I might have that in common. I mean, when I brought my Soulscape tracks into Kevin to mix that album in, I guess, 84 or 85, he pulled up all the tracks and was listening to stuff. He says, there's no horn players on here. And it's just you and you're playing everything. And I said, yeah, I fired all the horn players. I didn't want to put up with the BS anymore. So I ended up just making an album where I played all the instruments and he mixed it, and that was the beginning of a really long and great relationship with him. But you're a multi-instrumentalist too, right?
Just guitars and keyboards. Really, I mean, I started playing drums, but my mom took me right off of that when I was a kid. She was just like, stop that. That's too much noise for me,
Drums are pretty loud.
Drums are very, very, back in, when I was 10 years old. Yeah. It's like, I mean, you don't have the electronic thing with the headphones back then, that was before you could do that. And, somebody just be sitting there and you just be hearing that sort of crud,
Right. Yeah. I started out on drums myself, and it was practice pad for a year. The whole first year I had one practice pad.
Wow.
And I was not allowed to have a drum set. And, I had to practice every day, but I was working just with fundamental stuff like metronome and rudiments, drum rudiments. They had a specific set of 26 of them at that time. Sight reading, snare drum parts, sight reading, odd time signatures, learning rhythm, reading rhythm. And it's amazing how much that discipline has helped me over all these years, because it's, I end up with all these piano students that very few of them studied drums or studied rhythm. And that's one of the biggest hurdles, I think, for people, is to just get through counting and keeping a beat and reading.
The thing that kind of was a really kind of blessing for me was when I got away from metronome and started just playing to like a drum groove, I started to kind of, and I started to feel better about, how because the tick, tick, tick thing, that's great. But when you start to and being a guitar player, you're always taught to follow the hi-hat. That's where you find your rhythm guitar groove, is following the hi-hat. Yeah. And that's an old Beau Hill trick. And, he just said, I don't want you to listen to the kick as much as I want you to listen to the hi-hat. And I went, oh, wow. And that's kind of helped me, especially when I started jangling acoustic guitar a lot. That was like, oh, man, that was just such a blessing. So there's a little secret for you, guitar players: follow the hi-hat.
Follow the hi-hat. Follow the yellow brick hat. Well, I got access to a Lindrum that was a pre-MIDI.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Lindrum over at Kirk Hutchinson's studio, and that's what I used on the Soulscape record, along with playing some live drums. And my biggest hit off of that record was called "Making Love." And you probably remember, how fun it was the first time you unboxed a drum machine.
Oh, yeah.
And you're looking at it, and all you have to do is plug in headphones or speakers and hit a button.
Yeah.
And then, it's like always on time. It's never late. It doesn't try to steal your girlfriend. There's all these advantages. And it had the pre-programmed beat. I think the beat number 1 on the Lindrum, when I first hit play, was the beat to Michael Jackson's "Beat It,"
which was not John Robinson, by the way.
Which was not John Robinson. Actually, it was Indugu Chancellor was the guy that played live drums on that album. and Indugo was a good friend of mine. But I remember hearing that beat and going, "Oh yeah, man, this sounds familiar. I wonder what would happen if I slow it down."
Oh wow! There you go.
So I slowed it down to 100 BPM and started playing piano over it, and that's how I wrote my Grammy-nominated song. Was by slowing down a Michael Jackson groove.
That's cool.
On a drum machine. But so you went from, playing guitars and then got into bands. Were you a band guy all the way back to high school and stuff, or what?
It's kind of funny that I would play, when I was in high school, I was just learning and I wasn't very good. I mean, I was, all the other guys that were kind of natural and stuff like that. And I'd be like, that sort of thing. I was that guy, right? I was just, and
I always hated guys like you.
And so I was hanging out. Guy that's still one of my best friends. He's now a pilot for FedEx. But all through our senior year, he was talking to me about, what do you should be doing this music thing. You're good at this. And I'm like going, where is he getting this from? I'm really very average, and I can barely play these little songs that you learn in high school, like China Grove and stuff like that, right?
Right.
And he goes, listen, I enrolled in this program and I want you to look into it, because we were talking about going to college and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do for college and whatnot.
All right, sure.
And so he says to me, I want you to look into this. And it was this special curriculum at BYU that you basically ended up working on the Donnie and Marie show. It was a music kind of curriculum, but part of the curriculum was you ended up interning on the Donnie and Marie show, right?
Wow.
now, first of all, the first thing is I get all excited about it and I come home and I don't know anything about BYU or, Mormon or anything like that. I go, Mom, I think I found something, And she just looked at me like, you're going to do what?
Yeah.
But I went and I got interviewed by the Mormon bishop and I got accepted to the program. I didn't go. And that's a whole nother long story. That'll take 3 episodes of this to get to that. Okay. But Greg went and he ended up playing. Every once in a while, he was a little bit country playing bass up there, on the show and stuff.
Crazy.
And so he went and did that. And I stayed at home. And I found out about these guys that were making a record at Applewood Studios. Remember Applewood? The building's still there, Rob.
Wow.
The building's still standing out there. They built up all around it. It's crazy, but it's just like holding a bunch of junk. I don't know why they didn't tear, the 7-Eleven went away and everything else around there went away, but Applewood still stands.
Crazy.
And so I had I'd heard about this band that was recording out at Applewood called Airborne. They were signed to CBS. They were the kind of music that I was trying to really get into playing, which was kind of the AOR. Before it was called arena rock, it was kind of called mainstream rock.
Album-oriented rock was
AOR, yeah.
AOR, yeah.
And so I'd heard about these guys, and I made it my mission to meet them. And I end up through this fluky thing. Beau Hill ends up calling me, and he goes, he basically had to engineer like a couple of sessions. They lost an engineer at Applewood. He, of course, was working at nights on the Airborne project. And so he ends up getting me. I had booked time at Applewood in hopes of meeting these guys. And Beau Hill ends up calling me because he had ended up getting me as the session, my band. And so I meet him and he likes me. And I'm really not very good and stuff, but he liked me. And he just, hey, if you want to hang out and stuff. And so I started hanging out with them and kind of being a little band mascot, intern guy, running around, rolling up cables and hauling gear and getting cheeseburgers and
second engineer, man. Second engineer.
Kind of got to do that, and that's how this all kind of started. Was I was just like, wow, and hanging with rock stars, and they left. Beau left town in 1982, and of course went on to become one of the biggest rock producers of all time. And I needed some cassette dubs because I didn't know what I was going to do. And I walk into Colorado Sound and there it is. And I'm like, well, okay, well, I guess I'll stay here. That's kind of how that all went together, in a very quick nutshell.
Wow. So your first album on your own, you've actually done just like tons of writing and projects, and looking at your bio, it's just A-list names one after another. Are you still making solo Ric Cabot Podmore solo albums now, or?
We're the producer's cuts record, because I don't sing. I'm blessed with all these, the Robbie Wyckoffs and the A.B. Keys and the Kelly Moneymakers of the world.
Right.
So I'm kind of more like David Foster. I'll write the songs and stuff like that, and then I'll get somebody else to do the cuts. And so I'm in the process of just finishing the Songs Volume 2. Songs Volume 1 was out a couple of years ago, and that features Robbie Wyckoff and Ashley Harris. And do you see that? You see that? You don't want to be on TV. Go on.
Why not, man? People hold their cats during my show, and
she likes attention, man. And when I'm even when I'm on the phone, it's crazy. So
that's totally cool, man. I have right outside of my spot here, there is a possum that has befriended me. And I really don't want to be friends with this possum. I step out like late at night at 2 a.m. for a cigarette. Blam! Here's this possum comes by and hangs out with me. And I'm like, please. I mean, the first time I saw it, it scared me to death because I didn't know what it was.
Right.
I thought it was a giant rat.
Yeah, that's what they look like.
That's what they look like.
What they look like.
So, Songs Volume 2 is going to be your newest project.
Yeah, I've got, I think 4 songs left to finish. Everything else is done. And this has been, these are kind of like stuff that I do over time in between doing other things. And so this one will have Robbie Wyckoff's on a couple of cuts, a really great duet of Robbie and Ashley Amber Harris, which is one of my favorites. Of course, the great Christine Starkey, who just blows it out of she's amazing. Who else is on this record? Terry Ilous is on a track, great Terry Ilous from XYZ, and I'm trying to think. Oh, and I think Ken Stacy's on one of these tracks too. So
nice,
it's a nice little assortment of great singers, which I can't believe I opened up my phone and, those numbers are in there. I'm like, oh my God, how did that happen?
Well, it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy to build a Rolodex. And, that's one of the things about the remaining studios that are still left standing here in LA is that those guys as Rolodex are insane.
Yeah, exactly.
By the thousands of talented producers and artists and singers and engineers and all of that. So when you're envisioning putting together a solo project like this, is it all kind of in a certain genre? Is it all like AOR stuff, or what's it like?
No. Well, what kind of happened to me, Rob, is that for years I was in the band Arrival, and I was kind of the the main writer in that and stuff. And for the records that we did put out and stuff, people would always tell me, they'd say, your music sounds, while it's a rock band and everything like that, it sounds like it should be in a movie. And so that's when I kind of changed over and I started getting other people to sing the songs, is that we were kind of going for more of a soundtrack, cinematic type of vibe. And so that's kind of, I use the rock background to, help me do things like, orchestrate and all that kind of crazy stuff. But for the most part, I've kind of done stuff that's a little bit more middle of the road, kind of my own kind of sound. I've, that's kind of what I think of when I'm doing this. I'm writing the songs, but then I'm like going, okay, where do we want to take it? What do we want it to sound like? What's the vibe going to be? And so that's kind of what I've been, pushing for, I would say, for the past 15 years or so. Is just to, I go and I get to work with these amazing players. I mean, again, it's when you get to have Larry Antonino and John Robinson in the same room playing your tune, you just kind of go, okay, this can't be bad.
Right.
So,
and
then again,
that's actually like kind of our connecting point is Larry Antonino, the world famous bass player, is now with Pablo Cruz, and he was in the Tom Hanks movie.
Oh yeah,
did.
that thing.
Well, how did you guys hook up in the first place, Rick? How did you meet Larry?
Well, we have an interesting connectivity as well. He knew Robbie Wyckoff, and when I was out in LA, a couple times I stayed at Robbie's house. Robbie and Victoria would just have me stay there. In fact, their spare bedroom, they just call that Rick's room. But we had a night where we went to go see some friends. I think it was Danny Jacobs' band. If you know who Danny is, he does a bunch of work for Disney, and he was a session player around town for years. Okay. And we went and saw their band, and Larry happened to be there. And I was there with Robbie and Victoria, and we started talking. But Larry was one of the connectivities I have with him was that he was in a band called Unruly Child that featured Mark Free as the singer, who was also the singer in Arrival years earlier. And that record was produced by Beau Hill. And so the Unruly Child project was where we kind of got connected to, and we met that night and we started talking. And, you know, next thing I just said, hey, you ever want to play? Let me know, you know.
Sure.
And, he was like, yeah, sure, no problem. And so he's been on my recordings. I think that was back in 2008. So for about the past, 13, 14 years, Larry's been, he's been the guy playing on all my tracks.
That's so great, man. So,
yeah, he's a great player, I mean, you know for sure.
Well, Larry's just a fun hang. It's like, there's especially now during the COVID times, we're not spending, most people are not spending much time together because it's so dangerous and this and that. But Larry and I have done some traveling, and he's been in several of my performing groups. We were rhythm section for Ronnie Laws for a while.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know all about that.
And man, some of those stories, like things that on the road.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember one night we had played this festival out in Detroit. I think it was Detroit, Michigan, and it was an R&B night where they had, 4 different bands, and nothing started on time and nothing finished on time.
Sure. Oh yeah.
And we were the headliner with a guy that we were playing with, so we didn't go on until like 1 a.m. And by this time, the theater is like filled with pot smoke, and there's
God,
all kinds of shenanigans going on and other stuff. So we're basically up all night. Call was at 5 a.m. to fly back to LA, and we hadn't slept at all. And we get in the airport. I think I know this story. I think I know where this goes. This is not a happy ending. No, well, maybe you do know this story, but
I think Larry's told me this.
Yeah, but we get on the plane, and there's a lady sitting in between us, and we're both just burnt to a crisp. So we put on our seatbelts, and we're starting to try and just close our eyes and just go, oh man, now we got to fly like 4 hours home. And then all of a sudden Larry's like, hey, what's that smell?
I know this story, man. this is bad. Keep going. Keep going. All my friends want to hear this.
Okay. So I'm like, wow, man, that smell is pretty bad. Then we realize, sadly, it's coming from the lady in the middle seat in our row.
Right.
And it does not smell good. And, we haven't taken off yet. And those little fans, those little air vent things, right, they're not doing the trick, man. It's getting worse and worse. And then finally, the lady pushes on the stewardess button to get somebody to come over. And the flight attendant comes over and says, can I help you? And the lady says, yes, my colostomy bag broke.
Oh, wow, God.
Oh. And we're like, no shit. No. Yes.
No, really.
Get everywhere.
Oh, God.
This is terrible. And, we both felt horrible for this lady because not only did she have to get off of the plane,
they had to take her out.
she did not have a spare bag with her.
Oh, Jesus.
So we kind of got off. They took everybody off of the plane,
right?
And then they came out with the hazmat guys.
Hazmat guys, yeah.
And here we are now. It's like 8:30 in the morning, and we're sitting in the airport by the gate, just going, "FML, man, this is terrible. Oh my God, what a horrible situation to be in." But it's just part of the stuff that happens when you go on the road. I mean, all kinds of things can happen. I remember when we were we had played in Dubai with a Bruce Willis band, and we're trying to get out of Dubai, right?
Yeah.
And so all kinds of drama happened that morning. It was a large band. We had 14 members and 2 security and front of house guy and a monitor guy. We were traveling, living large and everything. And we had the Memphis Horns with us at that time. And they're a great horn section, but these guys are old. Like, we had the trombone player from Memphis Horns. And we're there in the airport getting ready to board the plane, and he has a heart attack next to the baggage thing.
Wow.
And nobody knows what's going on. And he's like, ah. And then they says, "Oh my God, I think he had a heart attack." And so then, of course, the Arab dudes come over with their machine guns, and they're pointing machine guns at him, like close range, because they think he's faking it and he's got a bomb and he's a terrorist and he's going to blow himself up.
God.
So they're like, trying to speak, and our representative is trying to do English and everything. And then the guys with the machine guns just pick this dude up, and they set him on the baggage conveyor belt, and off he goes underneath those little flaps where your suitcase goes to be loaded up. Off he goes.
Wow. I wouldn't like that experience with a heart attack, man. You think, okay, this is it.
And, it's just the kind of things that happen when you go on the road. But it looks to me like you're mostly staying around the Denver area and doing like Christmas projects and all kinds of stuff with the Broncos and the sports teams. Tell everybody about that stuff.
Well, Captain Christmas, that's me. That started a long, long time ago. The Christmas thing did. I got called into a club that I used to kind of frequent. I don't know if you'd remember this club. It was in Glendale. It was called Bangles. It was a little rock club. It was the Lift way back in the day. It was the Lift, and and so the owners and I were really kind of close and stuff like that. And so they called me into a meeting one day, and I'm kind of like going, "Okay, did I have a little too much last night and buy a round for the house and not pay for it or something?" I'm like really kind of freaking out, going, "What did I do?"
Right.
I go in, it's like an afternoon, whatever, in November, and the first question was, "Rick, do you think you could write a Christmas song?" And I was like, "I don't know, I've never done that before, I've just been writing rock songs and stuff." And
right.
And they came up with this idea. Their idea was to do kind of an ensemble project that, kind of a We Are the World of all the people that play in their club, all the bands around town, and raise money for Children's Hospital, to buy kids presents that had to be patients on Christmas Day. That was the whole thing. So I went, okay, and off I went. I'd already had a piece of music that I'd written. And back then, you'll appreciate this. What I used to write on back then and do arrangements on, I had an Ensoniq ESQ1.
I love those.
And it had a little 8-track, on board.
Yeah, 8-track sequencer, man.
Yeah, and so I'd written a piece of music that I didn't know what I was going to do with, and I went, this will probably work. So I just wrote the lyrical content, brought it back to them. They said, let's go. So, I basically cut the entire thing in one day. The video you see is, we did that all in one day for every Christmas Day back in 1993. And then for years, everybody was just saying, you got to do that again. You got to do that again.
Wow,
and I just
cool.
never kind of got me motivated to do it. And in 2012, because I do love living here, it was a very hard year for Colorado. There was wildfires. There were flooding. The rivers flooded. The second big Thompson flood, and the St. Vrain flooded and caused a bunch of damage. And we had the Aurora Theater tragedy. And so we were on the nightly news.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that Aurora thing where the guy shot everybody up. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had gone to a charity event for a fundraiser for the Royal Theatre tragedy, and it was a terrible one. And I do a lot of these, so I know when they're going to be profitable. I guess profitable, or whatever. They're going to be successful is the word I'll use.
Right.
And I can tell when they're not. And this one was just terrible. And I'm driving home, and I said to myself, "Okay, I got to do something. What can I do? What can I do?" And I went out, walked the dog, came back in, sat down on my piano, and this little six-note riff popped out, and I went, "Well, that sounds like Christmas. Let's do that." And so in 2012, we did Share the Magic. And then Share the Magic, I thought I did a really good job on that, but it just sat. Nobody wanted it for like 5 years.
Wow.
And in 2017, fortunately enough for me, an on-air personality at Cozy 101, I ended up at an event with her doing this kind of a fundraising thing. And she was telling me that they're going to switch over to Christmas music, which they do every year. They switch over to Christmas music.
Oh, right.
And I said, do you need anything that's kind of new or different like that? And she goes, no, she just didn't know who I was or anything like that at the time. Well, that year goes by, 2017. And in March of that year, she hits me up on Facebook, sends me a little messenger thing with the link to share, the YouTube link to Share the Magic. And she goes, "Who do I talk to about this?" She thought it was like signed to a record deal and stuff like that. And I just went, "No, teacher, it's just me.
Oh, okay.
Well, one thing leads to another, and I'm in these meetings, and Share the Magic becomes the theme for not only Cozy and their fundraising, but the Parade of Lights, the 9 News Parade of Lights. And, next thing I know, I'm on a parade float, being drugged through town with my tune blowing at the top of it. And I'm just like going, "All right, this works. Hey, Merry Christmas." And so we did that for 2 years. And then the third year was COVID. So we couldn't do the parade, but they still did a televised broadcast. And so they used one of my other Christmas songs for that.
Okay.
Christmas Is Here. And then this year we did Light the Lights. So I've kind of been the Christmas guy. I'm putting together a couple more pieces. I'm going to try and do a full-on package for 2022. So I have a couple of other Christmas pieces, and we're looking at doing maybe a nice live concert for fundraising.
Cool.
And so that's the Christmas part. The other kind of fun thing that's happened.
That's a pretty big deal, man, to be traveling around on a float.
Oh, you know what? I got to tell you, Rob,
that's got to be pretty hilarious.
Let me tell you, at first when we were in these meetings, and they kept saying, they were talking about, because Cozy had never had a float before. They always had a horse-drawn wagon was their kind of spot in the parade.
Right, I remember that, yeah.
They'd never had a float. So they're talking about the float, right? And I'm in these meetings with, 15 other people, from 9 News and Bonneville Radio and all these people, the parade people. And they just kept saying, well, all we want on the float is Rick and a piano. And I was like, well, that's stupid. I just kept saying that. And, and they just kept saying it. And so I go, okay, let's go see this float, right? And they had a float. And by the way, the float warehouse is the freakiest thing you ever saw, man. They should do a horror movie in there.
Wow.
The guy running around with a knife chasing the teenage girl, oh man, it's so wild. This big, huge warehouse and all these, floats and stuff. But
I never thought about what it's like inside a float warehouse.
Neither had I. So I go and I see this float, and I go back to the people at the radio station. I said, "You guys need to look at this float, because it doesn't look like Share the Magic, and it definitely doesn't look like Cozy 101 Christmas."
Uh-huh.
And it's just kind of this generic float that they'd had. I forget what they called it. It's Music in the City or something in it. So they end up going, they go, "Well, okay, if it's not going to work, what are we going to do?" And they all looked at me at this next meeting and said, "Rick, can you design the float?" And I went, "I don't know." I say, "You just really want me on the float with a piano? Come on, But I ended up coming up with an idea for the float. And so I ended up designing the float. And I still thought that this was going to be the career killer of all time. I was like going, they're going to put me on this float, and I'm just going to be up there waving with this piano and blah, da, 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 and whatnot. And I got to tell you something, Rob. I got to tell you something. When that float, we were at the very front, and when that float turned down 17th Street, which is the long run, there's about 100 and some odd thousand people lining the streets down that run.
Right.
The roar of the crowd. You know, it's 17th with all those big, huge glass and steel.
Right. I know that. Yeah,
reverberated like crazy. I was just like,
downtown Denver.
Okay. You know, I'm like, all right, now we're on to something. And I got to tell you, for years, okay, what's the greatest, what do they refer to in the world of music? What does almost every musician say the greatest gig to play in the world is? What does everybody say?
Well, there's lots of different ones.
What's the big outdoor joint here that's real famous?
Red Rocks?
Exactly. And I've never got to play Red Rocks. And I've kind of always had a little, you know, kind of hard on about that. And then I went and, you know, I did the parade for 2 years and I went, okay, hold on. Red Rocks holds 10,000. Parade does 500,000. I'm good.
Wow.
That was my way of kind of soothing that. Not that I don't want to play Red Rocks, but I'd love to do that. But it was kind of like, you know, that little torment of all my friends have played Red Rocks and I haven't, you know? So I went, yeah, but you know what? They stuck me on a parade. You know, I got a whole parade. So there you go.
But yeah, when you take those kinds of chances, and, you know, I think adventurous guys like you and I, take chances. I've always been one of those guys.
Oh, dude, I've admired you for some of the stuff you've done. Oh, you know, I've just gone, wow, he did that.
Well, probably one of the craziest ones was in the end of 1993, and I had this great band, and I had Wilton Felder on sax from the Crusaders.
Right.
I had Larry Campbell on bass, who went on to do George Duke's band for years, and then I had Indugu on drums, and I got this opportunity to go play the Hanoi Opera House in Vietnam for New Year's.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, man, and I was, you know, the youngest of all these guys. Like, you know, Wilton's dead now and Dugu's dead, but I was just thinking, man, and I'd never been to Vietnam before, and I was all fired up. I wait till I tell my band they're going to be so stoked about doing this.
I can see it now.
So we're sitting there at a gig, and I'm like just crushed because all three of them said, no, we're not doing that. You know, it doesn't matter how much money it is, because it was during a trade embargo, you know, and the relations between the U.S. and I didn't care, man. So I just went and put all of my tracks on a little Sony DAT player. And I went with some doctors from Boulder who were sponsoring the thing. And man, we got on a plane and we flew over to Thailand, where you get your visa thing straightened out for Vietnam. So I got to be in Thailand a couple of days. Then I went to Vietnam and just had an incredible, like 10 days of my life there. I did a solo concert. Place was packed. I had my own driver with his own rickshaw. So, you know, people think like the traffic is bad there in Denver at, you know, I-25 and I-70, and out here it's like the 405.
The 405.
But just imagine what it's like when you're in downtown Vietnam and you're trying to get from your hotel across town to the university to teach a class. You're in this rickshaw with your briefcase, and then all around you, there's no stoplights. There are no stop signs. Everything's in the road. There are chickens in the road. There are motorcycles. There are pedestrians. There are skateboards. There are tractors. There are bicycles. There are minivans. There's regular vans. There's delivery people. Everything, and you're, you know, it's just fun to travel, isn't it? I mean, I think traveling, I wish this COVID thing would just finally wrap up and, you know, we could all get back to our normal lives, because I love going away from home. I love going all the way across the world to nutty places and doing stuff.
Yeah, I just go 2 places, and I'm right in the middle. It's either Nashville or LA. You know, it's kind of like, that's kind of my deal, you know, and it's just, that's what my world is. And I miss being out there. You know, I do. I you know, up until the last trip I made was for NAMM in 2020, right before all of this began.
Oh, that was right before it all went down.
February of 2020. That was the last time I traveled to LA.
Wow.
And it's, I miss it desperately. But
well, next time you're out here, man, you and Larry and I'll have to go drinking.
Oh yeah.
And I don't think Larry is allowed to drink anymore. And of course, Larry never drank before either, and neither did you.
No, I wouldn't know anything about that. I have lots of photos out there of our whole crew. He enjoys a pop here every once in a while, and I'm sure the three of us would be a delight. We'll just put it that way. We would be a delight.
Well, we'll definitely do it, and I think it would be fun to work on something together, maybe in the future.
Absolutely.
Where the three of us could collaborate on some things. Larry and I have had some great successful collaborations with other artists, and plus, it would be fun for us to come to Colorado Sound, because the studio there is, always been state of the art and always been great. And I haven't been inside, from the lobby into the room since Kevin has rebuilt everything. I'd love to see what's going on in there now.
It's how he is. He's just, he just doesn't know how to settle and say, okay, everything's just fine. He's always looking for the next thing, whether it be, I don't know if you know this, he just put in, I think it's a little over a year now, maybe it's a couple of years, but he just put in a Neve 5088 console. I think it's the last one before Rupert Neve passed away.
Wow.
It's the last one to come out of there before he passed away. And
wow.
Of course, he acquired the building next door, which was an old warehouse. So we call it Studio W. And he's done all this work in there. I don't know, the video for Light the Lights, if you saw that was all shot in there. That's primarily what he did that for, so that he can incorporate. He's got a great video crew.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. So, and of course, the remote truck's parked over there. So we can actually record out of that room because the truck's over there. And the truck, he takes that truck and, of course, records most of the shows up at Red Rocks. So, there's remote. Whenever you hear a remote recording, the audio is coming through Colorado Sound's remote truck. Whenever you see, Dave Matthews or whoever at Red Rocks, and they put out a DVD or whoever, Kevin's the guy that's recording that. That truck's up there.
Wow.
So the truck's in the warehouse, and it's he really did a nice job on that. It's beautiful. And so
I'm just thrilled that it's still in business and that everything is cranking along. And man, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show today and sharing a nice slice of Colorado and Ric Cabot Podmore history. Where will you be dining on Podmore Lane? So for anybody that wants to follow you and find you, your website is what?
RicCabotPodmore.com.
Okay, and how about your social and all that stuff?
Social media, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter. I'm not as big on the Instagram. I kind of just I follow everybody else. I don't do a bunch of stuff on there. Come find me.
I can tell that you're not, because you called it the Instagram. It's so funny, man. My dad back in the day, this was like 10 years ago or something. We were talking to him about the internet. Dad, what do you think about what's going on? He says, well, I'm not really that up on My Face and Spacebook. So, but yeah, I'm sure people will be really especially interested in seeing what your next Christmas thing is going to be, because I watched the videos of the other things, and it's just,
please.
Even though you never made it to the Donnie and Marie show, by now, You could probably be an honorary Mormon guest on that show. Or
Probably.
you got a lot of really happy, upbeat vibes and good stuff.
And you can find the videos on YouTube as well. So
Great.
Please check them out and show us some love, subscribe, what have you.
Give him a thumbs up, folks. All right. Well, that's going to do it for another episode of the Planetmullins Podcast.
Thank you very much.
It's been Ric Cabot Podmore from Denver. I'm in LA at Venice Beach, and we'll see everybody on the next one.